Do you know what effective communication is, or what is effective communication? Just because we are talking doesn't mean we are communicating. In fact, very often the more we talk, the less people listen. So what can teachers do to improve students' listening skills and to make sure that they get their messages they're really heard by them? Communication is much more than talk. Communication is a strategic process. A process is a structured method. When we apply a method to our communication process, we improve the opportunities for our audience to listen to us and follow our ideas. So this presentation will explain how listening comprehension can enhance the process of language learning acquisition, and how students can use strategies to facilitate the process, and how teachers can nurture the development of these strategies. It is generally recognized that listening comprehension plays a key role in facilitating language learning. According to Gary, in the early stages of secondary language teaching and learning, provides advantages of 4 different types: cognitive, efficiency, utility, and effective. So the cognitive advantage of initial emphasis on listening comprehension is its respect for a more natural way to learn a language. When students first begin to learn a language, they have difficulty listening for accurate meaning and learning to produce correct sounds at the same time. Concentrating on speaking leaves little room for listening and little room for comprehension, that is, understanding meaningful messages. Closely related to the cognitive advantage is the efficiency advantage. Language learning can be more efficient if learners are not immediately required to produce all the language material to which they are exposed. This allows for more meaningful language use earlier in the course, since learners can use all the limited potential resources to concentrate on meaning. This has been shown to enhance the acquisition of other language skills as well. A preliminary emphasis on listening is also more efficient because students are exposed only to good language models instead of the imperfect utterances of classmates. This makes more efficient use of everyone's time than the oral class, where one can spend a great deal of time waiting for answers that are slow in coming. The final advantage or emphasis on listening comprehension is the psychological advantage. Without the pressure of early oral production, there is less potential embarrassment about producing sounds that are difficult to master, especially for adults and teenagers. Once this pressure is eliminated, they can relax and focus on developing the listening skills and on internalizing the rules, which would facilitate the emergence of the other skills. Moreover, listening comprehension results in early achievement and a sense of success. To conclude, listening comprehension is a highly integrative skill. It plays an important role in the process of language learning acquisition, facilitating the emergence of other roles in the process of language and other language skills. So for these reasons, an awareness and development of effective listening comprehension strategies can help students capitalize on the language input they are receiving. Listening comprehension is a very complex and very active process in which the listener must distinguish between sounds, understand vocabulary and grammatical structures, interpret stress and intonation, retain what was gathered in all the above, and interpret it within the media as well as the larger sociocultural context of the utterance. Coordinating all of these involves a great deal of mental activity on the part of the listener. And listening is a hard work. It deserves more analysis and support. So listening comprehension is a separate and important component of language learning only came into focus after a significant debate about its validity. Let's see one of the recent research. Okay, the 2 researchers have validated a body of language comprehension learning strategies and an accompanying classification scheme grounded strategies in cognitive theory. They have differentiated and categorized the range of cognitive activity in language learning into 2 main types: metacognitive and cognitive strategies. Metacognitive strategies are important because they oversee, regulate, or direct the language learning process. These strategies, which involve thinking about the learning process, include planning, monitoring, and evaluating. However, without the deployment of appropriate cognitive strategies, the potential of these metacognitive strategies is curtailed. So, cognitive strategies manipulate the material to be learned or apply specific technique to a learning task. And a third category, socio-affective strategies, was added to describe learning that happens when language learners cooperate with classmates, question the teacher for clarification, or apply specific techniques to lower their anxiety level. Now let's have a general overview of what plan for the successful completion of a listening task could be. Okay, the pedagogical sequence of pre-listening, listening, post-listening activities is not new. However, if used inconsistently, this sequence of teaching strategies can guide students to the mental process for successful listening comprehension and promote the acquisition of metacognitive strategies in three categories: planning, monitoring, and evaluating. Pre-listening activities are crucial to good second language pedagogy. During this critical phase of the listening process, teachers prepare students for what they will hear and what they are expected to do. First, students need to bring to consciousness their knowledge of the topic, their knowledge of how information is organized in different texts, and any relevant cultural information. And second, the purpose for listening must be established so that students know the specific information they need to listen for or the degree of detail required. Using all the available information, students can make predictions to anticipate what they might hear. Pre-listening activities help students make decisions about what to listen for and subsequently to focus attention on meaning while listening. In order to encourage a personal approach to listening and thereby foster autonomy during this phase, the teacher can encourage discussions with the whole class or in pairs on how different students prepare themselves for a particular listening task before beginning it. Basically, while listening, students come to the second phase, which is called monitor comprehension during a listening task. And they make decisions about strategy use. They need to evaluate continually what they are comprehending for. The first, consistency with their predictions, and the second, internal consistency, that is the ongoing interpretation of the oral text or interaction. And periodic practice in decision-making skills helps students to monitor more effectively. So an excellent activity for developing both planning and monitoring strategies is a form of the close exercise. For example, students are given a written version of the oral text with individual words or parts of the text deleted. Before listening to the text, students are asked to read the text and attempt to fill in the missing words. This helps students to use context, to develop inferencing, and to predict the words that they might hear. A class discussion or group work or pair work will allow students to review difficulties and justify choices. So a subsequent listening to the text promotes selective attention, which is planning, and verification of hypotheses, which is monitoring. A reflection on the activity, like discussing the merits of the decision made, for example, will promote the strategy of evaluation. And the next phase is evaluate the approach and outcomes of a listening task. So students need to evaluate the results of decisions made during the listening task. The teacher can encourage self-evaluation and reflection approach by asking students to assess the effectiveness of strategies used. So group outcomes or class discussions on the approach taken by different students can also listening tasks stimulate reflection and worthwhile evaluation. Students are encouraged to share individual routes leading to success, such as how someone guessed the meaning of a certain word or how someone modified a particular strategy. In order to successfully implement all the phases mentioned above, you see the performance checklist number 1 for listening activity on slide 8. So, and in order to help students consciously focus on all those phases, so before and after the completion of listening tasks, so teachers' comprehension can develop performance checklists such as the one you can see. So, and instruments such as this one can guide students in preparing themselves for a particular listening task or for evaluating their performance afterwards. So, and this checklist encourages students to reflect on different cognitive steps to be taken in preparing for a listening activity and evaluating the subsequent results. So, after the pre-listening activity, students complete the first part of the checklist, which is before listening, you see on the left, and checking whether or not they have considered all the elements and whether they have performed all the necessary steps for success before they begin to listen. And after listening and attempting to complete the listening task, students complete the second part, which is after listening, you see on the right, which helps students to evaluate their performance in a systematic fashion, particularly if they had difficulty completing the task. So this checklist can be easily modified by teachers, and you can reorder sentences, you can reorder ideas, you can add more ideas, and the last line, which is highlighted in red, it can also be extended and modified. So this instrument can be adjusted as necessary. So in the it also can be mentioned that the number of elements can be reduced as well. It can also be translated in some native language, just in order to make sure that students really understand each element. A number of columns can be added so that the instrument can be used in a number of different dates, with room for reflective comments on the other side of the sheet. So this checklist could become a part of the student's portfolio as well for tracking progress over time, and it can help the teacher to identify what points for development could be. Now you see the performance checklist for listening comprehension number 2. And you can also see here that this checklist is more focused on learning objectives of high-order thinking skills on listening. So it helps students to develop strategies for listening without the benefit of pre-listening activities. So, and if students are to develop real-life listening skills, for example, they're listening to the radio or watching television, they must learn to develop strategies that will help them understand the gist of a text, as well as the details that they need to know. Students listen to an oral text and attempt to identify main elements of the text. So after the first listening, they write their hypothesis for each element under the guess, for example, where, what the setting they need to guess. Then they need to provide reasons in the next column and state why, how they arrived at their hypothesis, and each student then works with a partner to compare answers and discuss potential discrepancies. So on the basis of their discussion, they indicate other possibilities for which they will listen during the second time through the text. After the second listening and subsequent class discussion to verify the answer, and you see V stands for verification check in this column when your guess has been verified. So each student is encouraged to reflect on the process by identifying specifically what he or she will do differently next time. And development and use of performance checklists can help students become more aware of the process of listening, allowing them to consciously intervene in the process by deploying efficient strategies. So focus on the process as well as on the product of listening can help students reflect on their learning and encourage them consciously to adjust their strategies. And again, Teachers can easily modify this checklist. So the number of elements can be also reduced. And again, you need to make sure that all learning objectives that you pick up for the lesson can be covered by using this checklist, because you have where questions like where settings, when, time, day, sessions. It comes with learning objectives focused more on details and specific information. And if it's who, how, it's more on deduced meaning, for example, and more complicated learning objectives. So, and you see that the table is divided into columns. The first one goes after the first listening, the second one goes before the second listening. So just to make sure the students fill in all the tables, all the lines. And again, it's highlighted in red, what I found easy, what I found difficult, and what we'll do next time. So it's for self-reflection. And at the end of my presentation, I would like to emphasize that listening comprehension, as well as the application of listening strategies, will help students to achieve greater success in language learning more independently. Learning strategies are useful tools for students because they open up more reliable and less frustrating routes to language learning success. So in particular, the use of listening strategies can make authentic texts more accessible in the early stages of learning a language, so that the process will become more relevant and interesting for the learners. All the strategies I have mentioned before can be helpful and can be a good methodological tool in your teaching, everyday teaching. So this was some of our ideas. We invite you to add your own. Thank you for your attention and good luck.